In the winter of 1923, a British Army physician stationed near the Sea of Galilee recorded something in his field notebook that he could not explain. Among the Fellahin villagers of the Jordan Valley, he documented almost no cases of the heart disease killing Europeans by the thousands. No diabetes, no bowel cancer. The men worked stone fields into their 80s. The women bore children and buried none of them to the wasting illnesses of London. He wrote one line that modern researchers still quote: "Their food is their medicine, and their medicine is their food." That notebook is not a legend. Colonial medical officers across Mandate Palestine recorded the same pattern for 3 decades. And what those villagers were eating is sitting within 20 feet of you right now, in the aisles of any grocery store in America. The Bible names these foods by hand. 10 of them. 10 meals, 10 ingredients, 10 combinations that trace back to specific verses, specific chapters, specific moments when the God of Israel told his people what to put in their bodies. And somewhere between the Mandate records and the modern pharmacy, that knowledge was buried. This is the case of what the Holy Land ate, and why the industry that replaced those foods does not want you to remember. Begin with the anchor. Deuteronomy, chapter 8, verse 8. A land of wheat, and barley, and vines, and fig trees, and pomegranates. A land of oil olive, and honey. 7 species, named by Moses before the people crossed the Jordan. Not a poem, a prescription. The rabbinic tradition, preserved in the tractate, Bikurim, treats these 7 as the agricultural signature of covenant land. And every one of them, examined under modern laboratory conditions, carries a compound profile that reads like a cardiology textbook. Start with barley. The carbonized barley loaves recovered from Iron Age storage jars at Tel Lachish match almost exactly the hulled barley still grown by a handful of Galilean farmers. Beta-glucan content runs 3 to 4 times higher than the refined barley sold in American supermarkets. Beta-glucan is the fiber that pulls cholesterol out of the bloodstream before the liver can reabsorb it. When Elisha fed 100 men from 20 loaves of barley in 2 Kings, chapter 4, verse 42, he was not feeding them bread. He was feeding them the lipid-clearing grain of the covenant. Turn the next stone, the fig. Archaeologists working Judean desert caves have recovered fig remains dated to the Bronze Age, preserved in the dry air, still identifiable by cultivar. The Judean fig is not the dried fig in the plastic tub at the checkout counter. It is higher in potassium, higher in a class of polyphenols that modern studies link to blood pressure reduction and insulin sensitivity. When Hezekiah lay dying in Isaiah chapter 38, the prophet ordered a poultice of figs laid on the king's boil. The king recovered. Medical historians have argued for a century that the fig poultice drew infection through a specific enzymatic action. The king lived 15 more years. Third stone, olive oil, pressed cold from the first harvest, the kind the temple required for the lampstand in Exodus chapter 27, verse 20. Pure olive oil for the light. Beaten, not heated. Beaten preserves the oleocanthal, the compound that functions in the human body as a natural anti-inflammatory, measurable in the same pathways as ibuprofen, but without the stomach damage. The oil sold as extra virgin in most American stores has been blended, heated, cut with seed oils. Multiple investigations into the olive oil supply chain have shown that the majority of bottles labeled extra virgin in the United States fail the chemical standard the temple would have recognized. Fourth stone, the pomegranate. The garment of the high priest was ringed with pomegranates in Exodus chapter 28, verse 33. The fruit appears on Solomon's temple pillars. It is not decoration. The pomegranate carries punicalagin at concentrations higher than almost any other fruit on earth. Researchers studying cardiovascular plaque have documented measurable reduction in arterial stiffness among populations consuming traditional pomegranate juice. The seeds, eaten whole, carry a fatty acid that several laboratories have linked to the suppression of the cellular pathways that drive prostate tumors. Fifth stone, raw honey, wild, uncut. The honey Samson found in the carcass of the lion in Judges chapter 14. The honey John the Baptist ate in the wilderness in Matthew chapter 3, verse 4. Not the clear liquid in the plastic bear. Wild honey, harvested from comb, carries bee-derived enzymes that have been shown in wound care studies to close diabetic ulcers that pharmaceutical dressings could not. And here is where the case begins to turn. Because if these foods were known, named in scripture, eaten by the villagers the British physician documented, growing in the same valleys for 4,000 years, a question rises through the evidence. How did Americans stop eating them? The answer is not mystical. It is documented. Between 1910 and 1970, the industrialization of the American food supply replaced whole grains with refined flour, cold-pressed oils with hydrogenated seed oils, wild harvested honey with high fructose corn syrup, cultivar-specific fruit with shelf-stable hybrids bred for transport rather than nutrition. The patents filed during those decades by the emerging processed food conglomerates are public record. So are the marketing campaigns that taught 2 generations of American housewives that margarine was healthier than butter, that white bread was more refined than whole grain, that canned fruit was modern and fresh fig was peasant food. The pharmaceutical industry that grew in parallel found its most reliable customers in the populations that abandoned the 7 species first. This is not speculation. This is supply chain history. Continue the list. 6th, lentils. The red lentils of Jacob's pottage in Genesis chapter 25, verse 34. Carrying a protein-fiber ratio that stabilizes blood sugar in diabetics better than most prescribed interventions. 7th, grapes, eaten whole with skin and seed, the resveratrol. Concentrated in the skin, the proanthocyanidins in the seed, the wine of Psalm chapter 104, verse 15, that maketh glad the heart of man. 8th, bitter herbs, the maror of Exodus chapter 12, verse 8. The wild greens the Israelites ate with the Passover lamb, carrying liver-supporting compounds that no multivitamin reproduces. 9th, almonds, the rod of Aaron that budded in Numbers chapter 17, carrying vitamin E and magnesium at levels that correlate with lower all-cause mortality in every longitudinal study that has measured them. 10th, fish from fresh water, broiled, the fish the risen Christ ate in Luke chapter 24, verse 42, carrying the omega-3 fatty acids that the American processed diet has stripped from the bloodstream of an entire generation. 10 meals. 10 ingredients named by God himself, eaten by the prophets, preserved by the villagers the colonial physicians could not understand. The application is simple enough to begin this week. 1 loaf of whole hulled barley bread, baked or purchased from a traditional bakery. 1 handful of wild figs or quality dried Turkish figs, eaten daily. 1 tablespoon of real, cold-pressed olive oil, unheated, drizzled on food after cooking. 1 pomegranate seeded by hand, eaten across 3 days. 1 teaspoon of raw, unfiltered honey, taken in the morning. 1 cup of cooked red lentils with bitter greens. 1 small portion of grapes with skin and seed. 1 handful of raw almonds. 1 serving of broiled freshwater fish twice a week. 1 loaf. 1 fruit. 1 oil. 1 spice. 1 sweet. 1 legume. 1 green. 1 seed. 1 fish. The pantry of the Bible. And here is the piece the investigation has been holding back. The rabbinic tradition, preserved in the tractate Barakot, describes a specific order in which these foods were blessed and consumed at the Sabbath table. The order was not ceremonial. The order tracked how the compounds interact in the human digestive tract. Olive oil before grain, bitter herb before lentil, honey after fruit. The sequence itself is medicine. The Temple-era Jews did not stumble onto this. They were taught it, verse by verse, from a God who designed the body and the harvest to answer each other. The pharmaceutical industry cannot patent a fig. It cannot patent barley. It cannot patent the order in which a righteous man eats his supper. The food God named still grows. The verses still read. The only thing missing from the American table is the memory of what was already given. Which of these 10 will you return to your table first? Write the name in the comments and the verse beside it. Subscribe, because the next file we open concerns a single spice recovered from a sealed jar in the Judean hills, and what it did to the blood of the man who ate it.